The Young and the Restless spoilers. Victor's descent into isolation, a family torn apart. In Genoa City, the stakes were always high, but for Victor Newman, the current battle was more than just about business. It was personal. Victor's determination to destroy Jabot and bring Cain Ashby into his fold marked the beginning of a new chapter in his war for control of the city. But the price of his ambition was steep. Nikki Newman, his wife, had long been the one person who could temper his worst instincts, the one who could steer him toward more measured decisions. But now, Nikki had made it clear, she wanted no part of his schemes with Cain. She refused to be dragged into a battle that threatened to tear apart what little remained of their fragile family unity. Victor, however, had long been used to getting his way. His obsession with Jabot, his need to dominate his rivals and claim victory at any cost, overshadowed any attempts at diplomacy or family. He had manipulated, threatened, and bullied his way to the top countless times, but this time, the consequences might be different. Nikki's refusal to align with him in this new crusade stung more than he cared to admit. It wasn't just a rejection of his plan, it felt like a rejection of him, of everything he had worked for, and for a man as proud as Victor Newman, that was a dangerous blow. For the first time in years, Victor began to wonder whether he had pushed his family too far. His relationship with Victoria had always been strained, but now, the walls seemed to be closing in on him from all sides. Victoria, his daughter, had always been fiercely independent, but her growing distance from him was becoming impossible to ignore. She had criticized his treatment of Claire Newman, his manipulation of her relationship with Kyle Abbott, and his constant interference in her own life. Victoria's anger simmered as she watched her father control and manipulate every aspect of the people she cared about. She had watched him control Claire, forcing her into a relationship with Kyle for the sake of family business, never once considering her desires or her feelings. This kind of paternalistic intervention, this constant stream of Victor's expectations and demands, had pushed Victoria to the brink. For Victoria, the final straw came when Cole Howard, the man she had been in a serious relationship with, had been forced out of her life due to Victor's meddling. The relationship had been strained long before Victor's interference, but the bitter truth was that Victor had effectively driven them apart, believing that Cole was an obstacle to Victoria's success. And when Cole left, Victoria was left with nothing but resentment toward her father. She had tried to push the pain away, but every attempt to find peace was marred by Victor's unrelenting need to control, to manipulate, and to assert his dominance. Now, with Cole gone, Victoria had no desire to continue pretending that everything was fine. Victoria was done. She was done with her father's interference in her relationships, done with his control over her life. Her bitterness had grown, and now, more than ever, she was prepared to push Victor away completely. She saw Nikki's refusal to engage in Victor's schemes as a beacon of strength, a clear message that it was possible to step away from his overwhelming influence. Victoria, much like her mother, was beginning to make a choice, to reclaim her life from the shadow of Victor's control, to distance herself from the man who had shaped her world but never allowed her to shape her own. The question was no longer whether she would walk away, it was when. This growing rift between father and daughter was a significant turning point. Victor was losing control of the one thing that had once been his strongest asset, his family. And as Victoria's frustration reached a boiling point, she realized that the same fate awaited her if she continued to stay in Victor's grasp. She couldn't keep sacrificing her happiness for the sake of his business ambitions. Her feelings for Kyle Abbott and Claire Newman had only deepened her resolve to break free, to build her own life, free from the chains of her father's expectations. Victor's manipulations had damaged so many lives, but his greatest betrayal had been against his own family. Audra's last-ditch effort, the pregnancy card. As for Audra Charles, she had found herself caught between the remnants of her failed romance with Nate Hastings and the tangled mess she had created with Kyle Abbott. Her lies, her manipulations, had finally come to light, and now, her future seemed uncertain. But in a desperate bid to salvage whatever she could from the wreckage, Audra turned to the one card she had left, the pregnancy. Audra had hoped that by telling Nate about the pregnancy, she could redeem herself in his eyes, create an emotional connection strong enough to undo the damage her lies had caused. She was prepared to face him, to reveal that they were expecting a child together, hoping that it would pull Nate back into her orbit. But even Audra knew that it was a dangerous gamble. Was the pregnancy real? Could she trust it to be the one thing that would save her, or was it just another manipulation in her long list of desperate attempts to control Nate? When Audra finally made the announcement, Nate's reaction was not what she had hoped. He had already been shaken by her previous lies, and the news of the pregnancy only fueled his anger and confusion. It wasn't just about the baby, it was about everything that had led to this moment. Audra's deceit, her alliances with Victor, and her tangled web of relationships had become too much for Nate to ignore. He no longer trusted her, and now the pregnancy felt like yet another layer of manipulation designed to keep him hooked. But Audra wasn't going down without a fight. In a final attempt to salvage her relationship with Nate, she did the one thing she had never done before, she told him the truth. Or at least, part of it. She explained her ties to Victor and admitted that her actions had been influenced by his pressure, but she insisted that her feelings for Nate had always been real. Would Nate believe her? Or would he see it for what it was, another attempt to cover up the damage she had caused? The future of Genoa City, shifting allegiances and rising tensions. As Nikki and Victoria distanced themselves from Victor, and Audra prepared to make one final stand, Genoa City found itself on the brink of change. Victor's decision to collaborate with Kane Ashby would have massive repercussions for Jabot and the entire business community, but it wasn't just about power, it was about family. Victor's isolation from his loved ones left him vulnerable, and the future of his empire was uncertain. The question now was not just about the business war with Kane Ashby, but about whether Victor could continue to push his family away without losing everything he had fought for. The coming weeks would be filled with betrayals, emotional reckonings, and perhaps even a few shocking revelations. Would Nikki and Victoria stand by him, or would they finally break free from the man who had controlled their lives for so long? This storyline delves into the emotional intricacies of family dynamics, manipulations, and the costs of betrayal. From Audra's manipulation to Victoria's rebellion against Victor, the conflicts are growing larger and more intense. I can expand further by adding more details to Nikki's struggle to repair her relationship with Victor and her own internal conflict. Exploring Audra's next steps in the face of Nate's rejection. Building up Victor's next move as he tries to outmaneuver everyone. Would you like me to continue expanding or deepen any specific character arcs in the next section? Victor Newman's descent into isolation, a family torn apart. Victor Newman, once the undisputed patriarch of the Newman Empire, had always played the game of family and business with a single goal in mind, total control. His ability to manipulate those around him, to bend others to his will, was legendary. But now, as the walls closed in around him, Victor was beginning to face a harsh reality. His manipulation of his own family, particularly his sons, had pushed them further and further away. Nick Newman, his own flesh and blood, had fallen under his influence for years, but the cracks in their relationship were starting to show. Nick had once been a loyal soldier, doing his father's bidding without question. But now, with Nick's relationship with Sally Spectra on the line and Victor's constant interference, Nick was finding himself torn between family loyalty and his own desires. For Victor, there was no such thing as personal boundaries. Sally had been a significant part of Nick's life, but to Victor, she was just another obstacle, another woman who didn't meet his approval. His jealousy and need to control his son's love life led him to meddle in their relationship, causing rifts that Nick couldn't ignore. Nick's relationship with Sally was a casualty of Victor's desire to control everything in his orbit. Nick had been happy, truly happy, for the first time in a long time, but that happiness was short-lived. Victor's interference had not only destroyed Nick's happiness but also alienated him from his own father. And then there was Adam Newman. Adam had always been the black sheep of the family, the one who had fought the hardest to earn his place in the Newman Empire. His relationship with Chelsea Lawson was perhaps the closest thing to stability that Adam had ever known. But just as he had begun to feel a sense of peace, Victor's influence once again threatened to destroy it. Chelsea's distance from Adam wasn't a result of their personal issues, it was the culmination of Victor's interference. Victor had used his influence to manipulate Adam into making decisions that ultimately hurt his relationship with Chelsea. Victor didn't care about the consequences for Adam's happiness. All that mattered was that Adam did what Victor wanted, that Adam remained under his thumb, just like Nick. Victor had already alienated his family, and now he was about to do it with Adam, too. As Adam struggled to find his footing in his relationship with Chelsea, the pressure from his father was mounting. Victor's control over Adam's life had always been absolute, but now, with Chelsea on the verge of walking away, Adam was forced to confront the reality that his father's manipulations were the root cause of his problems. He had tried to fight for Chelsea, tried to make things work, but Victor's influence had left him with no room to breathe. If Chelsea left him, Adam would blame Victor for the dissolution of his relationship, and this time, Victor wouldn't be able to make it go away with a well-placed threat or a strategic maneuver. Victor's war with the Abbott family, a family divided. As Victor's relationships with his sons deteriorated, his obsession with Jabot became even more pronounced. The company, once a symbol of Newman Enterprises' dominance, was now the focal point of Victor's latest power play. He had long despised the Abbott family, their success, their position, and their ability to stand in his way. And now, with his partnership with Kane Ashby, Victor was taking his rivalry with the Abbotts to new heights. Kane, who had previously been part of the Abbott family's inner circle, was now an ally in Victor's scheme to take down Jabot. The deal was simple: if Kane helped Victor destroy Jabot, he would be rewarded with a position of power within the Newman Empire. But Victor's plan was not without risks, and he knew that the destruction of Jabot would come at a heavy cost. Nikki, Victor's longtime wife, had always been the balancing force in his life, but she was growing weary of his schemes. Nikki had made it clear that she didn't want to be involved in Victor's vendetta against the Abbotts, and Victor was beginning to face the reality that he was alienating his family in the pursuit of power. Nikki's reluctance to support him, along with his fractured relationships with his children, left him more isolated than ever. His once powerful influence over his family was slipping, and it seemed that no matter what Victor did, he could not regain the loyalty he once had. Jack Abbott, the CEO of Jabot and the leader of the Abbott family, was well aware of Victor's machinations. The battle between Victor and Jack had been raging for years, but now it seemed more personal than ever. Victor's need to destroy Jabot and dominate the Abbott family was reaching a breaking point, and Jack was ready to fight back with everything he had. The Abbott-Newman feud was about to intensify, and with Victor's alliance with Kane, the stakes had never been higher. Victor's ultimate betrayal, alienating his family for power. The tension in Genoa City was palpable as Victor's ambitions reached new heights. His need for control, his obsession with destroying Jabot, and his increasingly manipulative tactics were beginning to take their toll on his family. Nick and Adam had already been pushed to their limits, and now Nikki and Victoria were on the verge of breaking away entirely. Victor had become a man driven by pride and ego, unable to see the damage he was causing to those closest to him. His need to dominate had alienated everyone in his family, and now, as he plotted to bring down Jabot and gain complete control of the city, he was facing a future alone. It was clear that Victor's war with the Abbotts and his relentless pursuit of power would come at a great cost. Kane Ashby, who had once been a part of the Abbott family, was now working with Victor to destroy them. Kane's role in this alliance had been one of desperation. He wanted power, yes, but he also wanted acceptance, and with Victor's influence, he believed he could finally claim it. But the question remained, would Kane's ambition blind him to the consequences of his actions? Would he be willing to sacrifice his own family for the sake of Victor's plan? Meanwhile, Victor's obsession with tearing down Jabot and his cold indifference to his family's emotional needs would likely lead to more betrayals. With Nikki, Victoria, Nick, and Adam all standing at odds with him, Victor's isolation would continue to deepen. Would he be able to repair these fractured relationships, or was he doomed to remain a man with nothing left to lose? This narrative dives deep into Victor's manipulations, his growing alienation from his family, and the complex power plays at work in Genoa City. The stakes have never been higher as alliances shift, relationships crumble, and Victor's obsession with control threatens to destroy everything he has built. Would you like me to expand on Victor's final confrontation with his family, or build more on Kane's role in the upcoming power struggles?